Hi everyone, and welcome to this Body Positivity in Fashion webinar, brought to you today by myself, Martine Alexander, and the Fashion Network. And I'm really excited to be chairing this webinar today. We're going to have a really good hour, and yeah, we're going to hopefully chat about a lot of topics and learn quite a lot. But in this discussion, we are going to explore how body positivity fits into the fashion industry and how you can incorporate these ethics into your brand, your business, or your professional activity, whatever that may be. As I say, I am Martine Alexander. I am a celebrity stylist and wardrobe concierge based in Manchester. And one of the things that I come across a lot is positivity and confidence and inclusion when I'm styling my clients, whether they are a celebrity or they are a non-celebrity or a regular person. So it's something I feel quite passionate about, is positivity in the fashion industry. So I'm really excited for today. But there are a few house rules before we start that I wanted to just read out for you all. Any questions or comments that you've got to the amazing ladies that are on the panel, just drop them in the chat box and I will be monitoring those as we go on. I really, really love interactivity in a webinar. So please, please raise your hand, pop a comment up, whatever. You know, we're here for you as well as you listening to us. We want you to get as much of it out of this as we can. So please get involved with it. Also, if you prefer to speak and, rather than type, then raise your hand. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen and we will turn your audio on. Don't worry, you don't have to be seen, but we will turn your audio on and you can speak to us and also the fantastic panelists. The session is recorded, which is great if you're watching this on catch up. It will go on YouTube straight after, and the Fashion Network will share this with, I assume, on their social media platforms, and also email this out to anybody that has missed it. Straight after this as well, we will do a debrief Zoom chat straight after this at 3 o'clock. So if you want to join in, then please let us know. It's about 15-20 minutes. If there are any of the panelists or myself that you want to have a chat with or ask any questions, then that's the perfect opportunity for you to meet and chat with us. Final thing is, we really want to know who you are. Where are you from? Where are you watching us from? Are you in the UK? Are you abroad? Are you a student? Are you an employee? Are you an employer? Wherever you are in the world, whatever your role is in the fashion industry, or if you've just got a general interest, pop a comment and let us know where you are, because we're dying to know who you are and where you're watching us from. So we're going to do a very quick poll before we start the actual discussion. And I've actually totally forgotten what the question is. The question is, it's just popped up, thank goodness, is, are you clued up on the inclusivity terminology? Yes, no, or a little bit? Because we were chatting before and we were saying that whether it's a generational thing, that some generations, the older generation, aren't necessarily as clued up as a younger generation, and we're really interested to know. So this is going to stay up, the poll is going to stay up for about a minute or two. Please, please, please let us know, and we will finish the poll and we'll publish the results very shortly. But I would really like to introduce our panelists for today. I will, and also just to say thank you so much to all the people that are, that are joining us from abroad. This is amazing. I will come back to you very, very shortly. Please, we are so excited that you are joining us today. But first of all, I'd like to introduce a fellow US to someone that's watching from America, is Jessy Humann, who is a book author and copywriter, and a copywriter at Fearless Foundry. Jessy, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it is just gone 6 a.m. where you are, so thank you so much. We have Laura Winson, is that right, Laura? Who's a founder and director of Zebedee Inclusive Talent Agency. And then we have Miranda Ferns, who is the head of buying at Freemans Grattan Holdings. So there's all of us here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Hello.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to try and put the the chat box a little bit further up so I can see who is here. Okay, I'm not sure how much longer we have on the poll. Has everybody that's watching clicked on yes, no, or a little bit? Hopefully you have. So that's the poll finished. Interestingly, yes, we had 52% said yes, you are clued up on inclusive terminology. A little bit was 40% and no is 8%. So I think this is a great learning tool for us all, really, that, you know, some people assume that people know about inclusivity. Some people actually assume that people don't know about it. So I think it was a great little exercise. But I'm just going to do a very quick shout out to a couple of people that are here. I saw someone from America and I can't see where you are. We've got somebody, a designer who's in Germany, which is Susie Velasco. We have someone watching from Latvia. Hello to you, Una. And we also have Alexandra Perry, who's in Nottingham. Wow. We have Helene in Brittany, in France, Birmingham. We have Amy and Laura in Manchester. And we have Carla, who is a personal stylist like my good self, in Mississippi. We have Peru. No, you are Peru, listening from Hamburg in Germany. We have Victoria, who is a freelance fashion photographer. This is amazing. We have a costume designer from Iowa. I could go on. Please keep telling us Portugal. Please keep telling us where you are from. Colorado in Portugal. This is amazing. So I could go on about that for ages. So we are here to talk about body positivity in the fashion industry. And thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. And let's just find out more. I'd like to start the discussion about where the body positivity movement is in 2022. And Jessy, do you have like any insights? Can you start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, kind of from my perspective on this question, I think in 2022, we're really at a point where it's not just about attracting more customers, right? It's not just about adding a few inclusive sizes here or there in an attempt to kind of bring more customers into your brand. It's really kind of about being meaningful and aligning your inclusive values with your brand. So, you know, I think there's been a lot of pushback from consumers in the fashion industry in terms of like, they can kind of see when a brand is faking customers out just in an attempt to attract customers. And so I think into 2022, the focus is really on, you know, inclusive values and really representing your ideal audience, not just by adding, you know, one or two inclusive sizes, but really about asking your audience, what do you want? What do you need? You know, who are you? What do you need to feel like you're included? And I think also, you know, unfortunately, from a marketing perspective, I work for a marketing agency, there's a lot of oppression laced throughout many marketing strategies. And so I think that in 2022, the body positivity movement is kind of seeing this upsurge of releasing some of these forms of oppression, whether they be racism, sexism, ageism, nativism. You know, the question becomes, how can we kind of release these things from the fashion industry and make this industry a place where everyone feels included, regardless of their, you know, sex, gender, background, etc.
And Laura, Miranda, do you stand in a similar vein, or do you disagree? What would your thoughts be initially?
I do relate to Jessy's point about making sure it's part of the brand, because I think you only have to look at how when other brands try to do it, but it's just not authentic, or, you know, it's just a bit of a token gesture rather than really being part of the brand ethos. So I do really understand that, Jessy.
Yeah, and I think I probably see that when I'm out, if I'm in stores or whatever, there isn't really, you know, they're starting, but it's not really a massive thing. It's just a kind of seed, I think, at the moment. And I think in time that probably will grow into probably a huge oak tree. Do you think that brands can do more?
Yes, definitely. So I'll just take everybody back in time a little bit. So I worked at M Brown, so I was there for 20 years, and in that time when I was there, we launched Simply Be, and that launched back in 1999, so same year as Millennium, so massive year for occasion, which I was buying at the time as well. But back then, Evans was the only other plus size brand, and I really you know, every time I spoke to customers that were shopping there, it was very much that they had to shop there, and it wasn't that they wanted to. So it was always comments such as, oh, it's so shapeless, you know, doesn't cover the trends. It was always dark colors, and it just really didn't embrace what they wanted to wear. Or, you know, they were hostages to Evans at that point because they just didn't have any choice. So then when we launched Simply Be, it was more about freedom to really go for it. No preconceptions about what that customer should wear. It was more about what trends coming through, embrace fitting them for this customer in mind, and really worked hard with QA on how to get the fits right. But as we say, there was no boundaries as such. You know, at the time I was size 8, and you know, if anything, it was quite negative for me, because it was always like, oh, you know, how do you understand me or what I want to wear? But in a way, the flip side of it, I had no preconceptions of what you should or shouldn't wear. I didn't have those boundaries, and I was really happy to just be trialing new styles, you know, speaking to the customers, and you know, lots of colour in there, bold prints. But I've got to say, the change from then to now, body positivity is now so embraced in the industry, and gone are the days where people would be reproing models to be slimmer, or you know, there's so much more diversity in terms of model size, age, ethnicity, and it's now the norm, thank God. So that's really positive. But can brands do more? I always think everybody's always on a learning curve, and there's always other things we can do. I think even in the industry, you look at some that are still using really super skinny models, you know, such a defined look, and there's so much pressure on how people should look. I think I've got a 20-year-old daughter, and you know, watching her take pictures of herself, and then you know, to me they all look the same, but she'll be really taking time to decide what to post. So I think there's still so much more we can do to kind of pull away from that, and you know, give people more positivity, and you know, not so much pressure on how you should look, or how and more freedom in what you can wear, you know, and you know, gone are the days and you know, only to look at Daily Mail online and you know, some of the shots they put on. I feel like sometimes it's about trying to embarrass people rather than embracing how people look. So yeah, I think there's still so much more we can do.
And I do totally have to agree, and I'll just address, I'd love to come to Laura in a second. I think for me, one of the things is, you know, if I've taken a client shopping who is plus size, they don't feel normal in a way, because I remember I had a client and I took her shopping and she said, oh, I can only go in Selfridges if I am looking at bags and shoes. And it was almost like, you know, you automatically are starting on a back foot. And I made it my mission to make her feel normal that day. And I took her in Selfridges, and actually Good American did jeans that went up to a size 20. So it was great. I could sort her out. And she said, you know what, if I go home with nothing today except for these jeans, I feel like it's been the best day of my life, because for once in my life, I feel normal. And one of the things that I would probably say, whether it's changed recently, I can't really comment, but what brands I tended to find that would stock from a 16 upwards as standard, they were just going wider, they weren't going longer. So if you're a plus size lady, what would happen is the fabric would stop just below the belly button. And that's not going to work. Yes, it fits width-wise, but it doesn't fit lengthwise. So I think that is quite, you know, it was like a learning curve that they needed to go back to the drawing board. And I think, you know, I'd love to come to you, Laura, and see what your thoughts are on you know, inclusivity, and, you know, can brands do more?
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me here today. Just in case anybody isn't really sure about who I am and who we are, I'm from Zebedee. We're an inclusive talent agency. We're worldwide. We're supplying talent models across the world to most of the so many big brands. And we specialize in representing people with disabilities, people with visible differences, and people from the trans and non-binary community who haven't really been, who are unfortunately are the people, when we have these discussions, that are most often left out of these discussions. We talk about size, we talk about ethnicity, we rarely talk about disability, visible difference, or gender identity. So from my perspective, there's so much more that brands can be doing. I love Simply Be. I think they've done wonderful being inclusive of size. I look on their website, I've seen nobody with a disability on there ever, or somebody with a visible difference. Disabled people make up 20% of the population. Yeah, they're represented in 0.06% of advertising. And when you look at fashion and beauty, that reduces even further to only 0.02%. So to put that in real terms, that's 2 models in every 10,000 models being booked across the industry. There's many, many brands who've never worked with a disabled model ever. I look through Vogue, you don't see a disabled model. You rarely see a curve model. So yes, there's a long way to go. And I find it's a bit hard. I know, like, we're talking about tokenism, and we've talked about a brand identity and brand morals, and how brands needs to be running through their business. But yeah, I think there's just so much more to do. Consumers are like, the people want to see it. I know, like, from our own research, we had one of our girls working on with Gucci in Vogue Italia last summer, Ellie Goldstein. Those images went viral, and Gucci got near enough a million likes on their Instagram with that post. She's got Down syndrome, Ellie, and it was just that the whole world saw that and loved it. Yet I haven't seen Gucci use another disabled model since. And where are all the other luxury brands following suit? London Fashion Week don't book disabled models ever. What what needs to be done to kind of move this forward? But these conversations are so important, because like I said, I think disability, visible difference, gender identity, they're the things that don't get discussed. Like, it's so good that we're discussing curve, we're discussing ethnic diversity, but we just need to be a little bit more open with our conversations, and see how we can be truly inclusive and across like intersectionality across various differences in our characters and our identities.
I when you were talking about Down syndrome, for me, the campaign that stuck in my mind was the River Island one that they did. Was it last summer? And that, like the Gucci one, was incredible. It's people stopped, people would look, and I just think, let's do more of it. Let's see it as the norm. Something? And
that was about 3 years ago, that one, actually. Labels are for clothes now. So I mean, River Island do great. They're really fantastic. They work with kids with disabilities all the time. Like, I see, they'll always come to us every time they're shooting for e-com or for campaign or whatever. They'll always work with disabled kids. But for some reason, there's a disconnect with the adult models. Like, we had that campaign in a bit of a surge a few years ago, and it's nothing more has come of it. So, I mean, look, when we started, we launched in 2017, and it was just a no-go. Nobody would even talk to us. It was not, people didn't even understand the premise of having a model with a disability. It was so rare, and we're the busiest we've ever been. We're booking 3,000 jobs a year, so obviously that's 3,000 more than there was like 5 years ago. But that's not enough. That's not enough. It needs to be just the norm.
I mean, do you think, and I'll probably pose this to Jessy, do you think that the media's role can do more? Can they, what's the media's role in all this, and how can they do more? How can they make this the norm? Is there more that they can do in the media?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the short answer is yes. I mean, the media has such a powerful plays such a powerful role in society, especially, social media. There, print media still obviously has its time and place, but social media, I mean, has just completely taken off. you know, I don't really know anybody who doesn't have some form of social media, but, and, you know, everybody is just pretty much constantly on it. And it's like, where's the representation, you know, just like Laura said, it's like, where are the people with disabilities, you know, where is the LGBTQIA community? Like, brands have these customers, but it's like they're not paying attention to them. And it's like the media is not, it's just the media is just completely overlooking it. And, you know, having one featured model every few years or every now and again, it's not enough, because when we look at the total population, I mean, there are billions of people on this planet, right? And the majority of people that we see represented in the media are white, able-bodied people, mostly women. And, you know, I know we're going to talk about men later in the discussion, but it's sad to see the media misrepresent the majority of the population, because not everybody is white, not everybody is able-bodied, and the media has such a powerful role in affecting our mental health and our perceptions of ourselves, especially, you know, younger people who grow up on social media, and this is all that they see. When all that they see is, you know, skinny white women on the cover of Vogue, or skinny white women all over their Instagram, but they don't look like that, you know, what does that do to their self-image? It affects their mental health, you know. And media, it is, you know, it's YouTube, it's Netflix, it's even LinkedIn. I mean, it's everywhere. Any media outlet that isn't accurately representing kind of the entire population, all people of all like races, genders, abilities, I think they're just so much more needs to be done. And I think that in part the pushback is coming from consumers, but we can't always just let the responsibility fall on us, you know, like brands need to be more accountable, right? This is why we need brands who do the work, and this is why we need, like, you know, an agency that places models who represent, you know, different types of people. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack there, but that's just kind of off the cuff.
I totally agree with you. And I think what Miranda said before about the Daily Mail, that's kind of where it started, really, was that these images, you know, before social media was so impactful, you know, people would put that, they would make an article, they wanted to ridicule, they put the worst picture of somebody on social media, on the Daily Mail website, and then they would you know, it was just an invite for trolls. But it's almost like they're out to make people look bad, and which in a way it's showing them warts and all, but it's not about defaming people. And obviously initially it was just at celebrities. Now that we've got the social media, it's more about, do we put a picture on Instagram that we filtered? You know, we put these false pictures of us on there, and that's what the media in a way need to control, is making sure that, you know, we are seeing people raw rather than just the version of us that we want people to see. You know, we need to see, because these kids are growing up and they're just thinking that that is the norm, and how are you supposed to compare to that and compete with that and be like that? And that's the hard thing. Anybody else? Miranda, do you want to say anything? Laura, and do you have any comments on what the media can do and what their role is?
I think in terms of social media, I think that's actually a really powerful medium for consumers to change things. Do you know, like lots and lots of our guys work as influencers as well, and or that, you know, their social posts are about disability advocacy or visible difference advocacy, and they're actually being booked because they've got something to talk about. They're interesting. Social media can be more than just an advertise, you know, it's more than just an image or an advertisement. You delve a little bit deeper into somebody's character and somebody's personality. So I think some brands are kind of getting that like actually being interesting sells, as well as, you know, look, you know, whatever you're trying to, the product that you're trying to sell. And I know that that's, you know, something that comes up a lot. But yeah, I mean, the media, we know it's all, we know you know, there's been many years of it being the Daily Mail effects that we've talked about. It's been, you know, terrible to so many celebrities, and things such as oh God, what's it called? The date. Why am I having a brain block? The dating show. Yeah, just so many like reality TV shows where everybody's so body beautiful and there's just no diversity in there.
Island.
Yeah, like Love Island. That's what I was going to. I don't watch it, but you know, but they, you know, of course they need to do more, and that not only that negatively impacts the people who are actually on the show, let alone anybody else who's watching it.
It's just not sustainable. These people, the show finishes and then that you see them a year down the line and they've put on 2 stone because they lost so much weight to go on the show. So it is crazy. But I just want to address a couple of comments that we've had. I'm going to come back to the curve washing because I think that's important. Somebody said before, who was it? Laid Back with Soul Child. Love what Laura is saying. Gucci benefited from that scenario. The model did not. She got not much work than she did before. And what did they what did they do to further her campaign, basically, which I think is really true.
Ellie, just to note on that, she's been super busy since then, not with Gucci, but she's been back-to-back booked ever since then. So it actually, in a way, it did launch her career, and she's done really well out of it, worked with so many brands and made some good money out of it, but not necessarily the Gucci in the luxury market.
Yeah. Una has agreed with you, Jessy. She said the goal shouldn't be to sprinkle a few tokens to check boxes. It should be to properly represent the whole human population. Sydney totally agrees with what you were saying, Jessy. Let me see. Other than, I'll come back to that question. I'm going to read these now. Sarah says, other than visuals, what can brands and websites, specifically e-com, do to make the average shopper feel as though fashion is designed for them, regardless of body type and shape and ability? Do we want to address that one now?
I think there's lots more that we can do. I think in terms of diversity for models, I think there has been a huge change in that. You know, not just at younger, but even older segments of the market as well. But do I think there's more to do? Of course there is. I think commercially, the thing always comes back to, you know, we've got a challenge on what we spend for each model. So then, you know, you've got a pool that you're using that are local girls. And so, you know, sometimes it's just the commercials of it that is where it is.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to come back to the curve washing. This is a great question from Michaela, who is Confidence and Style, which is great. What is your opinion on curve washing? Still too many brands who are stepping into the size inclusive market still only use models on the thinner size of plus size, or brands implement plus size into their collections, but maybe just in an extra large, which is definitely not representing most people in the larger sizes.
And I suppose I can answer that because I suppose from launching Simply Be, that was from a size 16 at the time right up to a 32. And you know, over time you can see where people are just extending sizes. You know, you can see where they've still only fitted on a small model rather than actually fitting up the sizes and really checking actually are the grading rules right. So for example, when we launched Simply Be, we would always fit on a size 16 and also 22 and wherever possible on other sizes as well, because you really needed to see if your shot actually represented all the different sizes. So we do things to the pattern, so you'd grade your lengths differently so that if you know how it looked on 16, then on 22 you'd grade, add more length on, so that back to your point, Martine, that it didn't just get wider. So you know, there is so much that we did in terms of technical fits to really make sure it was right. I think the difference where people are going from the standard size, and you know, I've got one supplier that, you know, has said to us previously it'll only ever fit on a size 12. It's just like, well, if it's going to a 28, that's no good. We still need to see it on the other sizes to make sure that the fits are right. And it's really about them relying on either the supplier knowing how you should, what your grade rules should be, or equally QA, your technician, to make sure that they really know how that is going to fit for those sizes. But it's so important. I think it is something that's lost now, as more and more people are going and wanting to just, you know, go after that market without actually investing the time and getting the knowledge and really analysing and looking at what the fit should be for those customers.
Yeah, totally agree with you, to be fair. So I'm just going to go over a couple of comments. Sarah has said, my question was about elements other than visuals for e-com, not model representation, but user experience from when shopping online. Emma has said, I think we need to cover more of a spectrum of people. We tend to only see extremes. I knew a size 10 model who couldn't get work because she doesn't fit into either extreme, which is really interesting. I think the only brand that just popped into my mind that I feel that gets it right is Good American. You know, they, and I'm sure there are a heck of a lot more out there that do. But for me, it's the only one that's shouting the loudest. They tend to go from, is it a 00, which obviously is a UK 2, up to, I'm not sure what size. I'm not sure, to be fair. But their models that they use are the extremes, which I like that fact. And obviously, we're only talking about women here. So, you know, I think we will be talking about other diversities shortly. But, you know, how can brands utilize this message sincerely? How can they do it so that it's coming across as sincerity rather than we need to tick a box?
I think we need to take a step back from before the product is actually on the market and before the website's there. I think, like, I'm no expert in recruitment practices, but I meet brands, I meet people working for brands, and mostly people sort of just look like me. You know, like something needs to happen, that there's more diversity at the development stages and working within brands. Like, again, I mean, my experience is disability, so I know that disabled people are not only not represented in advertising, but they're not represented in the workforce either. So if there was more disabled people working for brands or working for production or whatever it is, then they'd be advocating and putting ideas forward for themselves in terms of adaptive fashion. Or if you had more curve, you know, people working who are curve, maybe they would have more ideas in terms of fashion for curve, or cultural fashion, you know, fashion for different cultures, or older adults, or people who are part of the trans community. There's so much that could be done, and I think it kind of needs to take a step back and be at the development stage, rather than when we're just kind of scrambling, when everything's just saying, it's like, oh, how can we actually make this inclusive? There just needs to be a bit more thought process, I think, and a bit further back.
A comment from Victoria to yourself, Laura, is absolutely agree with what Laura is saying here. We need brands to be more diverse across the whole process, as this trickles down into what they're producing. Great question, Scarlett. Which brands do you think get it right when it comes to inclusivity? I'm opening that one out. Feel like Laura's going to say none of them. Not one of them.
I think Girlfriend Collective is a good one.
Yes.
Just off the top of my head. But Laura probably knows a bunch more.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know about that. I guess, like, we work a little bit with most brands. Like, so many brands get it a little bit right. Like I've mentioned, River Island, Primark in the UK, they are all constantly, I mean, and again, I can only comment on in front of the camera. I can only comment on what we are seeing in advertising. I can't comment on what goes behind the scenes in terms of their sustainability approaches or their HR or whatever it is. But in terms of their advertising, they do very well. They book inclusively a lot of the time. River Island do. Tommy Hilfiger have an adaptive, there's like brands now that are doing adaptive ranges for people with disabilities, Tommy Hilfiger being one of them, and I know there's many more that are looking into that market now. I think the supermarkets, in terms of visibility, they often do well, whether it's like George or two. So yeah. And yeah, so the supermarkets do it well. We've worked, the sports brands do it well, and I think that maybe is partly to do with Paralympics and kind of how that's you know, that's developed the representation of disabled people. So I'm talking about disability here. I think there's beauty brands such as Olay who've like started doing adaptive packaging, so people with disabilities or mobility needs or whatever it is, or sensory needs are finding it easier to use.
Yeah. I think they are starting. I remember the first one was kind of like Dove, wasn't it? And they had different skin, you know, you had a kind of a line of ladies that were different skin tones, different sizes, and that was probably the start of that movement in a way. Joe has said Fenty. I'm so sorry, I won't be able to pronounce this name. Someone said Skims. I'd like to pronounce the name, I'm so sorry. I'm going to come back. Savage Fenty, Beaumont Organic, Beats Boys Club. Wow, we've got loads of questions here. So there are obviously this is brilliant that we've got so many questions. I just hope we can answer them all. Just so you know as well, if we don't answer your question, hold on to it, copy it, and then when we come to the virtual networking session at 3:00, join us over there and we will answer your question there, just in case we don't get through everything. I am going to just say one. Well, we've answered the question from Scarlett as to which brands do we think get it right when it comes to inclusivity. We've kind of done that. We have a question. What are some buzzwords to avoid in marketing and website copy, like greenwashing and sustainability? What are the terms, expressions that sound more fake than genuinely inclusive? That's a good question. Thank you, Una. Anybody want to answer that? Okay, don't all speak. I feel like you're on mute. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on my own.
Again, I'm not an expert in copy or language. I wouldn't be the best person to. Yes. But I think just don't be. The thing for us is a lot of the time people have been afraid to talk about disability or visible difference, or even the trans and non-binary community. People are afraid to use language in case they get it wrong. But I think the important thing is to talk about this. So of course there are words that we all know that we wouldn't use, that are outdated. But I think people have been, I've spoken to people who've been afraid to say the word disability, disabled, but you can say that. So if you're ever worried about the language that you're using, you could always, I always think the best thing to do is talk to that group of people directly, speak to community groups who work with that community of people. That's the best advice I can give.
Yeah, and language is a really tricky one, actually, because even with around sustainability is another one where everybody's doing so much to whether it's organic cotton made in Africa, and recycled materials. But equally, I know that if I'm speaking to sometimes people in marketing, that because they don't fully understand it or don't know what to say around it, people do get a bit nervous, because there is sometimes a backlash to, unless you're, fully sustainable. But it's more about being on the journey and, taking steps to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And I think sometimes that's where it becomes a little bit tricky, or people find it hard because they're just worried about how to communicate it or what to say.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And I think, again, sometimes I think that can be a generational thing as well, because sometimes I'm a bit like, okay, take a breath. Is, how do I address this person? And that's obviously not from a fashion perspective, that's from an individual perspective. Just moving on, Sarah asked a question, why is this topic more focused on women? I'm curious. I feel that body positivism, oh my God, I can't say the word, affects men too, but we usually talk about women. However, Sarah, if you were to look on my lovely running order, we are moving on from women now, right at this second. So I am going to address men. First of all, kind of want to talk about beyond the sizing and how BIPOC, LGBTQ, disabled, chronically ill, and other, other marginalized bodies, like what do we do for them in this movement? How do we, they matter. How do we solve this? How do we move forward with it? What do we do? What's the next step?
I think Laura has made some good points, and just that, like, it's one step at a time. And I think it starts from a backwards perspective of brands really need to be thinking about this from the get-go, and asking these communities directly what they need to feel included, what are their needs, whether that's, an emotional need or a physical need. Like if somebody with, an amputated leg needs a different kind of genes than somebody with an able-bodied leg, right? So I think it's just going directly to the communities, asking them what they need, and just not being afraid to ask, because otherwise how will we know if we don't ask?
Yeah. And I think, for me, if I'm styling a client who maybe is transgender, the women's clothes versus men's clothes, totally different. Women have hips, a man doesn't have hips, therefore the cut is going to be different. It's not going to be a case of, okay, I'm going to take you shopping, we're going to find a skirt, or we're going to do whatever. Everything has to be altered to fit. It's very difficult, and I think that offering inclusive ranges is potentially a unisex collection is obviously what these brands are starting to do. I think it's just probably not filtering through yet to the high street. It's probably seen quite glorified on the catwalk at the moment. Would you agree, Laura?
Yeah, I guess it's starting, isn't it? We are starting to see the trans community being more catered for. But yeah, it's not on the high street, or it's very expensive, like to have something. It's not like easily accessible for all incomes, basically. I guess the brands just need to, I can just say this, they just need to understand this, but they need to understand that there is money in this. Like if you, like the disabled community, their spending power of them is 350 billion pounds a year in the UK alone, and in the world it's 1.3 trillion. So why on earth do brands not want their money? Like, why on earth are they not catering for that huge segment of society? It beggars belief. There's so very far and few between adaptive ranges for adults. There's like Marks and Spencer still do adaptive range up to, I think, age 12. Like, what happens to these children when they become adult? They become adults after that. I know there's lots of people working behind the scenes to try and change this and trying to work with brands. So I am hopeful, like within the next 5 to 10 years, something, that there's going to be so much work behind the scenes that this will become more of a norm. And the thing is, like, we're all, the likelihood is that we're all going to have a disability at one point in our lives, like as we get older, whether it's a mobility need, sight need, hearing need, whatever it is, we're going to get to that point. So it does really impact us all, or our family members. Like we all have, I've got family members with disability, we all know people. So I think they will get there, but it's just going to take a lot. This sort of thing's really important, having conversations like this. Anybody who's watching this who is in any sort of like powerful position with an organization, or even not, any position where they're able to have conversations with decision makers, then it needs to be brought up, and we all need to be just confident to try and raise it. That's all I can recommend.
I would also say as well, if you're unsure on what we're talking about as well, it's almost like it's okay to ask those questions, and be vulnerable enough to say, actually, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand how I take the next step. I don't understand what these BIPOC, what does that mean? It's being vulnerable to be able to ask the question and ask somebody that does know, like yourself, Laura, what does this mean? What does this mean? How do I include this? How do I change?
Absolutely.
Not even just on a brand level, on an individual level, so that we all as a humanity have some form of understanding I'm just going to read this. I haven't read it, but I'm going to read it out from Kirsten. I think our idea of what's beautiful needs to be challenged. Even when we see a variety of sizes, races, ability, there seems to be a consistent idea of pretty. Will this ever truly be accepting? And number two, brands and stores have had trouble over time affording the special sizes, when as simple as petite or women's. As we offer more and more, how can brands afford to make so many sizes? Or do we just move to unisex sizes and not appreciate form? Great question. Would you like to answer that, Miranda?
Yes, yeah, I'll pick up on that one. It is very hard, and it always comes back to commerciality of the ranges and what you'd want to do. I just want to pick out, just go back to the first point, Martine. What was the first one?
It was, I think our idea of what's beautiful needs to be challenged, even when we see a variety of sizes, races, ability. Yeah. There seems to be a consistent idea of pretty.
So on that point, we would even measure sales based on the models that are wearing the product. Wow. So we would, you would, because sometimes you'll look at your top 10 and you can see that over half of it's on the same model. So sometimes that is driving some decisions in terms of model, and it is who the customer reacts to. And you'll always get that. So, but I do get that sometimes that will then drive to, well, equally buyers would then want to put that product on that girl because they know that she sells the clothing. So that is very tricky. But, in this industry, you do measure everything, and that is a hard thing. So whilst you want that diversity and, but you do have challenges, because if you're doing a shoot, you've got to shoot, we can be up to 40 shots a day. So, logistically, it doesn't work unless you've got somebody that, you can put a lot of the product on. So that's always tricky. And that is, as it gets harder, there's, everybody's worried about cost of living and everything else. I suppose it's just going to make it more difficult that people are going to be trying to spend the marketing spend wisely on what will deliver the payback. But I know that doesn't help, Laura, in terms of what you're talking about, but in terms of using diversity. But I think that's where campaigns come in and really useful, and how we can elevate that. But, that was one of the reasons I wanted to join this panel today, to actually understand more about and what can we do, because exactly. I'm really conscious that you can't do it, and it's got to be part of the brand, it's got to come through so it rings true, and why you're doing it, rather than just token gestures, what somebody had said on one of the chats earlier.
And I think somebody else had asked a question asking the same thing about what, I'm a small brand, how do I involve this? I'm conscious of time, that we have 10 minutes left. I just want to ask Jessy, we've talked about women, we've talked about disability. Do you think that men are overlooked in all this? What are we doing about men, and are they overlooked?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are. Take a look at any social media platform, and the majority of models that you're going to see are going to be female. And I think part of the reason that the body positivity movement has largely been focused on women is because Western societies don't really create a safe place for men to talk about and express their feelings and their emotions, unfortunately, as unfortunate as that is. And so it kind of puts a lot of the weight of this movement onto women who are maybe more vocal about, their underrepresentation, and how they're kind of feeling about the impacts of the fashion industry on themselves. So I think that our Western societies need to do, well, probably also a lot of societies, but, I can't speak for countries outside of, the United States and in Europe and things like that. But we need to do a better job of telling men that it's okay to feel how they feel, and that it's okay to speak out about how they're feeling, because men matter. People who identify as male matter. And I think, where are those safe spaces for men? I don't see a lot of them. When I look out onto media outlets, if I see male models, oftentimes they're, you know, skinny, able-bodied white men, or, you know, they're the kind of, you know, tall, dark, and handsome kind of stereotype, you know. But when do we see plus size men? You know, when do we see men of the LGBTQIA, transgender men? When, you know, when do we see all these different types of representations? And the answer is that it's few and far between. And I think, you know, again, I'm from my background in marketing, I think a big, you know, there is of course a responsibility for brands to be representing their audience, because brands have men in their audience. Like, it's just a fact, you know. So why are these brands not representing this portion of their audience? Why are we always focusing on women? Yes, women spend a lot of money from like a consumer perspective, but so do men. So it's yeah, I think for me, from my perspective, it just comes down to like creating a safe space for men to be able to talk about how they feel misrepresented by the fashion industry and what they need in order to feel more included.
Anybody else got anything they would like to add on the male front?
Not really. I think it's just down to the same as what I was saying before about conversations. Like, obviously my emphasis is always, due to the nature of my work, is disability, but again, where like have the conversations about male representation, size representation, male models, what men have you got working in a brand? You know, like all these sort of conversations, the same as anything else. It's like, we need to be inclusive.
Yeah.
Inclusivity, just, you know, like I've stopped using the word diversity really, because I feel like with diversity, people kind of pick and choose which diverse characteristics they're interested in thinking about or talking about. But actually, if you talk about inclusion, this means everybody. Inclusion means everybody, not just different sizes, like, you know, male, women, various genders, various ages, various sizes, various looks. We've talked about conventionally pretty or whatever. Like, we work with people with birthmarks, scarring, burns, you know, just anybody who's really struggled to get representation from a typical agency. And, you know, like, yeah, just everyone. There's so many people here today, and the power is you know, we're a community now of people who are interested in that. So the power comes to after we've had this conversation, taking it into your brands, taking it to your CEOs, you know, your creative directors, whoever it is, your brand directors, saying, look, like this is important to the public, it's important to us. There's so many reasons it's morally the right thing to do, it's creatively the right thing to do, it does work, and it's financially the right thing to do. The customers are there. And I think once the big wigs start getting that, this is when things change.
Yeah. A question that I've just seen from Maha is, Laura, do you work with hijab wearing models?
Yes. Oh, am I on mute? Yes, we do. So we haven't, our emphasis isn't necessarily on ethnicity or religious diversity. However, we take all forms of diversity, like, we see it as really, really important within our brand. So we have, like, you know, of course, people who wear hijabs, people of various from various religions. Yeah, so we work across the board, but it would need to be so our main emphasis is some disability, visible difference, or trans and non-binary. So if you also wore a hijab, as well as having one of those characteristics, then we would be representing you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know what? It is really powerful, isn't it? Because I've seen that message pop up, and I could think of the campaign. It was River Island. I think they've got product on women wearing, and I think they're the things that really stick in your mind because it's different. And you know, equally, somebody mentioned earlier about Savage Fenty, and yeah, that's another one where actively different types of men's bodies, and you know, so you remember, because again, it's different. And I think it's how as a brand, how can we do more of that and change from the norm?
So do we want brands to stand out because they're different, but we almost want what is currently different to not be different?
Yes. but we're at a starting point, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, that's the flip of going back a few years where curve wasn't really covered, and I feel like we're at the starting point in terms of inclusivity, aren't we, and how that becomes more the norm.
So it obviously that, you know, for me, the key thing for today is getting the message out there. And, you know, what we've discussed, what more needs to be done. You know, we know what needs to be done, but to kind of summarize this, what does the future look like? How long do we need to make this change? Because obviously it's not going to be an overnight thing. How long, you know, do we need to put a time frame on it? What does the future look like for body positivity in the fashion industry? Oh,
it's a heavy question.
It's such a big question, isn't it? You know,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I personally envision a world where we don't have to have these kind of conversations, you know, where all people are represented, people of all abilities, all shapes, all sizes, all genders, all ages, you know, where you go, oh yeah, that person looks like me, or, you know, oh yeah, I feel beautiful just how I am. Like, you know, hopefully we can get to a place where we don't have to have these conversations. And, you know, will that happen? I don't know. I think I'm an optimist, so I like to think so. It might take some time, but I think it will just take conversations like these to keep happening, and just small baby steps from people who really care about this kind of stuff, you know.
I totally am with you. I think maybe it is baby steps. If you had to summarize, because we have 2 minutes left, Laura, what would your final comment be today?
Oh God, another hard question.
I love a good hard question.
Yeah. So kind of moving on from what you've just said, Jessy, there, I guess, like, wouldn't it be brilliant if we did get to the point where we don't have to think about it and it's second nature? But I feel like almost at the moment, we need to consciously think about it. We need to be anti-oppressive in our practice. Like, I'm a social worker by background, so this is like second to me. Like, I've always got to be thinking about anti-oppression. Like, all these members of society have been oppressed for so long, and this is just like, this industry is just one little part of their oppression, and it impacts them so much. But so just think about other people, think about kindness.
Yeah. Miranda, what would your final comment be today?
I would say, from what I've learned today, and how can we take that forward so that it is part of the brand, and what can we do differently in the future? 100%.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for giving us your time, and the Fashion Network your time. We all agree that there's a lot of work to be done, but hopefully we're facing the right way now. Everybody that's watched this, thank you so much for watching. And remember, there is now a debrief. If there's any questions, they've just put a little link to the Zoom that we're going to do now in about 2 minutes time. Please join us over there. If you want to talk to Laura, I think Miranda won't be there, but if you've got any questions for Miranda, we can pass them on. Hopefully Jessy will be there as well. But thank you from me, Martine Alexander, for joining us for this hour, and hopefully we will all see you soon with a bigger message. Take care. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.